They were going to talk about chopper clutch setups. So the different styles you can have, what's a suicide clutch, rocker clutch, jockey shift. Everybody says suicide shift. I really don't know what the fuck that means, but all these things. We're going to start off with the basic suicide clutch setup with a jockey shifter. So this one is on my iron head setup. I don't have another suicide setup right now, but I'll run this style setup on a lot of my shovels and everything else. This one is a little bit different because it is a hydraulic foot clutch. If you notice, there's no arm here. Like I'll show you on my pan head where there's linkage that actuates the clutch. This one has a hydraulic clutch. So there's a hydraulic clutch kicker cover. You could use any style setup, but this is a master cylinder off of I think it's a Suzuki GSX-R 600 question mark. I don't know. It's rear brake master cylinder. Pick any sport bike. I've got it hidden up under here, up under the transmission. So basically, when I use the lever, it pushes the master cylinder, which then actuates your clutch. So you don't need a whole lot for it to loosen up, and it actually works really well. Very smooth setup, vice some of the other styles I've ran. So when I talk suicide clutch, that means there's nothing holding down the clutch but you. That'll be more evident when we talk about the rocker clutch in a little bit, but basically, if I pull up to a stoplight and I want to stop, I have to hold this clutch down. All right, your foot just sits on it, and you can stay in gear, whatever you want to do. If you let go, if you release, then the bike is going to try and go. It's going to lurch forward, depending on where you're at. If you're revving it or something like that, it could jump pretty far. It could take in traffic, all that sort of stuff. Most of the time, if you're just idling, it's going to stall out. With this setup, the easiest way to ride these, if you're riding like in traffic and all that sort of stuff, is you would just go to first gear, right, when you pull it to the stoplight, and then find neutral, put it in neutral, then you release the clutch, and then you can put both your feet down, everything else. If you don't do that and you stay in first, then your foot is going to have to stay on this clutch, sitting there. So you can't put your left foot down anymore, which can be problematic, right? I've been knocked over a few times with like a big truck going by, or it gets kind of windy down here at the coast, so you can get a couple good gusts of wind. If you're not really paying attention, you're leaning a little bit too far, and it'll almost knock you over. Whenever that happens, your foot's going to instinctively come off the clutch. You'll throw your foot down, and I mean, all of mine, the bike is just stalled out instantly, right? But if you were on the gas for some sort of reason, then it, obviously you could take off, do whatever. Also with the jockey shift setup, so I'll show you the pan head has a different style transmission top. There's a tank shift top or jockey top transmission. This is a ratchet. So what I mean by that is to go into first, you just go back and then it releases, right? So that's gonna go right back to the exact same spot. You wanna go to second, go forward, release. Neutral, same idea as what you do with your foot, right? This is 99% of every single transmission that's out there running around is gonna be this style setup. They're a lot more fun than a regular style foot shift setup. Keeps me entertained while I'm running around, and honestly, it's just kind of almost for a cool factor. It also gets rid of a bunch of stuff on the bars, right? So no clutch lever up here. That is a brake lever, which is not for the front, it's for the rear, but this bike's kind of just a weirdo. It's got a bunch of random things on it that I did just to try. But now let's talk about the pan head. This is the setup on my pan head. So this is a different setup than what I showed you before with the suicide clutch idea. This one has a rocker clutch. So this is an original Harley Davidson clutch. From back in the day. I don't know if this was originally a police bike clutch or something along those lines. They use these on everything that would have had a tank shift. Obviously mine does not have a tank shift. I have a jockey shift set up on it, which I'll talk about in a second with this transmission, because that transmission top is different than the other bike I just showed you. Major differences with this one, vice a suicide clutch, is it will hold itself in position. So what I mean by that is the spring and everything on it, you go to disengage the clutch, spring in this arm is going to maintain pressure on the clutch rod or chain like I have right here, and the clutch is going to stay disengaged. So you can sit at a stoplight, you can do whatever you want to do, right? All that sort of stuff, put your foot down and not have to worry about the bike, taking off on you or something along those lines. And then when you're ready to go, all you do is toe to go, push down, there, you're off. Now this one you can feather a lot more than a normal suicide clutch. Although the hydraulic setup I have is pretty freaking smooth, this one is even better than that. You can, and it'll even most of the time hold itself at a certain position relatively easy. So if you get it right there, see, it'll just stay there. So like if that's slipping the clutch some, you don't want to put a lot of pressure on it. You don't have to keep messing with it with your foot. You just kind of just sit there, and then as you want to keep going, you slowly roll through. Very user-friendly setup on this, honestly. The rest of the bike is kind of crazy, right? I've got that chain primary, all that sort of stuff. And then as far as this transmission top versus a ratchet top transmission, this is a tank shift top or jockey top, however you want to talk about it. Major differences is this shifter, when you push it back or forward, is going to stay in whatever position it is. So if you go backwards, that's going to be to first gear. And you come forward, second gear is like right about here, I think. Third gear is here, and fourth gear is over here. So as you're riding, you have to remember what gear you're in, so you grab down the right area to get the shift knob as you're going. Otherwise, you'll be reaching back here when the shifter's over in this spot. You'll miss some gears, all that sort of stuff. The other thing that really gets me from going between bikes is, if you watch the first part, you understand the suicide clutch setup. This is completely different. So on a suicide, I push down with my toe to disengage the clutch. This one, I push down with my heel. So most of the time, I'll be sitting here and I'll be cruising around and I'll just have my foot sitting on the rocker clutch setup, right? Like I know I'm gonna be shifting some, so I'll just set it up here and I will go to shift and completely forget that it's toe to go. So I'll have my foot sitting down, my brain, I think that I'm on the clutch, and I'll try and grab this and just knock it right out of gear and be really confused for a second or two before I realize I completely, just screwed up with how I was riding. And then, hit the heel, knock it into the gear it's supposed to be in, and then, take off again wherever I want to go. So hopefully, between showing those two bikes, this makes a whole lot more sense out of the whole suicide clutch, jockey shift, right, versus like a tank shift and all these other things. But you can interchange a whole lot of these parts, right? So tank shift top, what would have been, or it is a rocker clutch that would have been used with the tank shift model. However, I'm running a jockey shift. So you can do a lot of these things and intermingle stuff with a whole bunch of these Harleys to create whatever kind of bike that you want, right? And set it up for whatever your riding style is.